Hey everyone, it's Miss McClellan, and today we're going to talk about Napoleon and what he was like as a leader from 1799 to 1804. So he came to power in 1799 by a coup. He forcefully overthrew the government, and he nominated himself Consul, meaning the leader of the consulate, the name of the government that he had established. Technically, he shared power with two other consuls, the leaders, but Napoleon, he basically had all the power. He was the one who had the right to appoint ministers, national, local officials who would be responsible only to him. So basically, he transformed the political system to where Napoleon had most of the say. He didn't really have an ideology, like he didn't believe in, say, for example, nationalism or liberalism. Napoleon's ideology was doing whatever he felt worked. He said that he would adopt any idea or use any person that he felt would ensure order and efficiency. And sometimes this meant that he had to contradict himself. For example, he proclaimed that he had laws that guaranteed equality, but sometimes they would favor particular groups, such as employers over workers or men over women. And sometimes he used his powers illegally to crush opposition. He claimed to rule by the will of the people, because if you remember, Napoleon was in line with the revolution, but he also justified his rule through the will of God. So basically he said, yes, I'm here for the people have a voice, but I'm the leader because God wanted me to be the leader. And that was a justification that actually a lot of the old kings in France had used. So as you all know, since the start of the revolution, all of the governments that France tried to establish were sort of all over the place. The laws were very complex. You had certain laws in the South that didn't apply to people in the North. People had different practices, different traditions, and it was hard to keep up with the laws and hard to enforce them. So Napoleon wanted to create a uniform, meaning the same, set of laws to make sure that France remained stable and orderly. So these laws would apply to everyone. Doesn't matter where in France you live, doesn't matter what religion you are. The law in France applies to every person in France. So he created these laws called the Civil Code of 1804. And this is usually called the Napoleonic Code. And so it was a common set of laws that Napoleon enforced and nobody could challenge. It didn't matter if your traditions in your region were different, you had to follow these laws. There were some reforms from the Revolution included in these laws. There was more equality. So privileges that were normally given to the nobility and the church were abolished. Feudalism was abolished. And land that had formerly been owned by the church said that it went away, and if people had sort of seized that land during the Revolution, that's who it belonged to. So all the land that the church had was no longer the church's. And all of these measures sort of showed the people that Napoleon was trying to sort of stay true to the Revolution by creating more equality and taking away some of the power from the nobility and the church. Lots of social and economic changes occurred under Napoleon, and one of them was the status of women. So Napoleon claimed that all of his laws applied equally to people, but by that he meant men. Many of the rights that women had been granted since the revolution started were reversed. So the husband had complete authority over his wife and children. Married women had to obey their husbands by law. They were prevented from making legal contracts themselves, and they could technically seek divorce, but they had lots of restrictions, and often they would have to get permission from a man before they could do that. This seems harsh, and it was, but Napoleon wasn't really different than many other of the leaders at this time. Unfortunately, this treatment of women was pretty common in Europe during this day and age. He also attempted to address France's financial problems. So one of the biggest problems was the way that taxes were collected. Before 1789, people called tax farmers were used in France, and it was a group of people who had essentially bought the right to collect taxes. So they pay a certain amount of money and they become a tax farmer. Their job is to collect the taxes. The problem with that is that when they collected the taxes, often they would keep a lot of the money for themselves instead of giving it all to the government. So Napoleon decided that he was going to use his own officials called prefects to collect the taxes. He also passed a law that banned trade unions, like labor unions, and made strikes illegal. So if workers felt that they were being treated unfairly or they weren't getting paid enough, they had no right to go on strike. That was against the law. When Napoleon came into power, France didn't really have a strong banking system. After the Revolution, 4 banks were created, but they didn't really have any government backing, and so they sort of faded out pretty quickly. So he created a Bank of France that was founded in 1800, and this really helped to strengthen France's finances. They were still in lots of debt because of the cost of war, but the Bank of France really helped to strengthen finances overall. Religion under Napoleon. You all know that during the Reign of Terror and the Revolution in general, religion kind of came under attack in France, and a lot of religious practices were outlawed. The power of the church was limited greatly. Napoleon was not really religious himself, but he knew that most people in France were, and he knew that if he took away religion, he wouldn't have support of a lot of the people in France. So in 1801, he decided to make an official agreement with the Pope, where he said that he officially recognized Roman Catholicism in France. And in return, the Pope said that Napoleon could nominate the men who would serve as bishops. So basically, he's choosing the leaders of the Catholic Church. And this is really good for Napoleon because it gives him a lot of power. The bishops are under his authority, so he can sort of determine what bishops say and do. And in this way, Napoleon controlled the church. And so if he wanted the church to support one of his policies, he could kind of make that happen. It gave him lots and lots of power. Most people felt content with this decision. They still had their churches and priests. They felt that everything was pretty much going okay. And people who weren't Catholic, Protestants, Jews, they were allowed to practice their religion free of persecution. So in terms of religion, Napoleon was pretty good at making everyone happy. He was also good at manipulating it to the point where he had a lot of control over the Catholic Church. Napoleonic propaganda. You all saw in class the other day lots of examples of propaganda that Napoleon produced. And you know that he was a very skilled self-promoter. Okay, he knew how to make himself look good. We all know that he went to Egypt and got defeated. One of the ways that he tried to make it look like he didn't was he brought back things from Egypt to show, like things he had, like tokens of his victory, I guess. Brought those back to be studied. He had famous artists record his achievements. Those are some of the portraits that you all analyzed in class. He would hold festivals organized in his honor. He also created this series of medals, like a medal that you wear around your neck, to celebrate his accomplishments. So there's like, if he won a battle, for example, he would create a medal that represented that battle for people like to wear. Another way that he promoted himself is he censored the press. So he filtered what the newspapers could and could not say to make sure that the French people only heard the good things about him. In 1804, Napoleon said, the consulate, this form of government, is no more. I'm not the consul anymore, I'm an emperor. And basically by emperor, he is declaring that France is going to become an empire and I'm going to rule it. We're going to expand, we're going to have this big kingdom, and I'm going to be in charge of it. He literally crowned himself. At his coronation, his crowning ceremony, the Pope who was there was about to crown him, and he took the crown from the Pope and placed it on his own head as a symbol of Napoleon taking power for himself. His position as emperor, which is similar to a king, certainly contradicted the government that France had. It was supposed to be a republic where people had rights and they voted. Napoleon claimed that, yes, it was a contradiction, but that this change was going to unify the country and it would allow him to continue enforcing the best features of the revolution. Now, you can decide for yourself whether or not you think that's true, but that was Napoleon's reasoning. Once he established the empire and crowned himself emperor, the people of France voted in favor of it. However, these votes have been rigged. They have been arranged to show an overwhelming majority in favor of the change. when in reality, most people did not vote in favor of the change. They rigged the votes to make it seem like he had gotten this popular support for him being emperor. There's lots of debate why he declared himself emperor. Some people think that he thought the title of emperor just sounded better. Others say that he felt that having an emperor might get other countries with kings sort of on their side. And others say that he wanted to declare himself king, but emperor was sort of a safer, less intense title. You can decide why you think Napoleon crowned himself emperor. Nobody will ever really know what was going on in his head. But from this point onward, he ruled as a king. He had a large court, placed an emphasis on ceremonies. His soldiers were given new uniforms, and certain followers were given these imperial fancy titles. That is all we're going to talk about Napoleon for now, and you will have a chance next class to tell me what you think about Napoleon and his time as ruler of France. Remember that you need to take notes, write a short summary, and any questions that you have. Have a great day.